Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a librarian with the Cosby Library and Community Commons, and in this video I'll be showing you how to make these feather embellishments out of yarn that you might use for a larger project that you'll be doing with your yarn crafting kit. So your yarn crafting kit includes a dowel rod, and so you can see I've started a project here using the dowel rod, and I'll be using these feather embellishments. I'll be including a picture of the finished project at the end of this video. So this is one of the many decorative options that you have just using yarn and a few other simple items. So for this project you will need a pipe cleaner or some other piece of wire to form the central portion of your feather. You'll need a yarn needle, and some plastic ones were included in your kit. You'll need some scissors, some all-purpose glue, and I use fabric stiffener, and this is different from some other instructions that you might see on the internet, and I'll describe in what way this is different. So the other instructions that you might see on the internet are going to be all glue instructions, and this is an example that I made using all glue, and I just didn't really like the look of it, how stiff it was and how the fibers laid down on the project. I just didn't really care for it. But if you want to make a very specific shape of feather, if you want to make a real narrow feather, or if you want to make a feather that maybe is curved like that, that's something that you're going to be able to more easily achieve using the all glue method. But I experimented, and I really like the way that the fabric stiffener makes the feather look. It's a much softer look. It does still hold that feather shape, but it would be difficult to make a really dramatically curved feather or even a really thin feather using this method, because it just doesn't hold it down quite as well as the glue. But I will be showing you the fabric stiffener method in this video. Now, to begin with, you will need your central portion of your feather. So here I have a pipe cleaner that I've simply just folded in half, and I've twisted it to make it a little bit more stable. I won't be showing this portion live on video because it is very, very messy, but I will describe it. So to make the central portion of your feather, this is where you're going to use the glue. So you'll get a bowl or a plate or something else that you can pour a puddle of glue into. You'll pour that puddle of glue out, and then you will just completely saturate a nice long piece of yarn with that glue. And once that piece of yarn is really saturated, you're probably going to want to wear gloves or have maybe a wet rag or a wet paper towel nearby, because this is going to be messy. Once that yarn is totally saturated, you're simply going to tie it on to one end, just using 1/2 of a square knot. This is just to hold it in place while you're wrapping. And then it doesn't really matter which direction, you're just going to start wrapping that pipe cleaner. And it doesn't have to be super tight. You do want to make sure though that the fuzz of the pipe cleaner is completely covered. You might still have a little bit of your pipe cleaner showing at either end once you're done. You can see here that I do still have a little bit of that pipe cleaner showing. So make sure that you choose a color that's not going to stand out too much. So just go slowly. Remember, in your imagination, this is going to be all covered in glue. And once you're completely finished wrapping the pipe cleaner, you'll tie it off again at the other end, and you'll let this sit for 24 to 48 hours until it turns into something that looks like this. So this is one that's completely stiffened. I've trimmed the end down, and this is going to form the central part of another feather. So that's what you're going to use the glue for in my method. And here you can see, now that I've done a close-up a little bit, you can kind of see the difference between the two styles. So it's up to you. You can very easily do this all glue method, and you'll use basically the same technique of just really, really saturating your yarn, and then you will shape the feather. But I'm going to use the fabric stiffener for this video. Once the central portion of your feather is done, then you will add the actual feather part. So here I've already started a little bit, and when you tie on more, make sure that you're always you've always got the feather facing the same way. So here, it's hard to see, but my knot is actually on the top here, and then it makes a nice curve on the other side. So I want to continue that. You'll just need to use small pieces of yarn, and make sure they are quite a bit longer than the shape that you want to end up with. In general, your feathers using the fabric stiffener are going to be a little bit fatter. The fabric stiffener isn't going to be able to make the yarn make a really dramatic angle, so make sure that you're prepared to make a little bit of a fatter feather or a little bit of a wider feather. And you will simply tie each new piece on and make sure that it's nice and snugged up against the previous piece. And you'll just keep on going in whatever pattern you like until you are all the way down to the bottom. So I'm simply using, again, that half of a square knot to tie on each new piece. And I try to do it the same way each time, because you see there is a little bit of an angle that forms, so I want that to be consistent too all the way down my feather. I'm going to continue working on this, and I will come back when I have the central portion of my feather completely covered, and I'll show you how to do the point of the feather, because there is a little bit something special that you have to do to make sure that you have a point down here. So I will be right back, and we will continue our feather. All right, we are back, and I'm going to show you now how to attach the bottom portion of the feather. So you can see in one of these that I've already done that there are pieces sticking out from the bottom to complete the feather. One of the drawbacks of the fabric stiffener is that it doesn't have enough holding strength to really make these come together down here and hold that into place. You can sort of do that with the all glue method, but not with the fabric stiffening method. So I'm going to show you how to compensate for that. And you will need 2 pieces of yarn, whatever you want the bottom of your feather color to be. And you want them to be fairly long, especially if you're using one of these bigger kinds of plastic yarn needles. When you're making your feather, you'll also want to knot the bottom portion fairly loosely at first so that you can get the needle in there. I like to use the metal yarn needles. I happen to have several of these because I do crochet, but I will show you how you can do it with the plastic needle. You just have to make sure that you leave enough space to use the plastic needle. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle. And then what I'm going to do is from the side with the knot, so not this side, you can definitely see there's a difference, right? So this is the side with no knot, this is the side with the knot. So from the side with the knot, I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm going to go underneath those loosely knotted pieces here at the end. So I'm going to pull that up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop back around, and I'm not going to go back down into where I was. I'm going to go maybe 1 piece of yarn down and go back through. And now take my needle off, and I'm going to tighten up everything here in a second. So it can be kind of loose for now. So there I've got 2 pieces sort of on one side. I'm going to tighten it up a little bit just so everything doesn't fall apart. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, just going up underneath. And then coming back down. Okay. And so now that I have those two in place, I can go back and I can tighten up each one of these. And I have pierced the yarn right here. You want to be kind of careful not to do that because it can make it a little hard to tighten everything up. So can you see there that I've pierced the yarn? So I can correct that here and just pull it back out again. Let me see. Here it is. There we go. Okay, I got it now. All right. So I've tightened up all of my side strands here, the ones that I had on before, and then I'm just going to gently pull on these to pull that loop down to where you can't really see it anymore. And then sort of wiggle everything back into place. So this is a little fussy. You don't have to do quite so much fussing when you use a metal needle just because it's thinner, so you don't have to leave everything quite so loose. Make sure that if you use a metal needle, you don't use one that has a point on it, like a real sharp point, because you will end up piercing your thread then, and it does make it hard to get everything all tightened up. And it looks like I do need to add one last piece down there to the bottom, so make sure before you start stiffening everything that you have everything that you want on your feather. You can add later on, but then you have another waiting period for it all to dry, so it just makes it a lot more convenient if you have everything on to begin with. Okay. Make sure that everything is nice and tight. And so from here, I actually shape my feather several times, which is probably not completely necessary, but I like to keep sort of fussing with it as I go along. So I do sort of an initial shaping. I sort of have an idea of how wide my feather is going to end up to begin with. So I do sort of a first round of shaping just to get rid of some of the excess. And at this point, if you make a mistake, you can take it off and try again. And I do leave the end a little bit long at this point. I don't need to leave it too long though, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. So here I'm just gradually forming the general shape. I'm not trying to get everything real exact right now. Okay. And this one's going to be a little bit larger. You can make fairly large ones. I didn't show you earlier, but I have made already one pretty big one. So this is sort of the range of sizes that you can get. Maybe make even smaller ones using this method. All right, I'm done with my needles. And I'm actually done with this all-purpose glue. All I need for right now is my fabric stiffener, and I'll need my scissors a little bit later on. So I'm going to get one of my trays. And then all I'll do is simply completely saturate the new pieces, the feather pieces, with my fabric stiffener. And you can use gloves if you like, a little bit less messy that way. And then I will just gradually work that feather into the shape that I would like it to have. And with the fabric stiffener, you can let things overlap a little bit and then sort of correct it later on, but it's really best to get everything more or less where you would like it before you let it dry. And if you feel that some places aren't quite wet enough, then go ahead and spray it down again. Now this says quick drying on the label, and maybe it really is if you're using fabric or lace, which is what this product is designed for. I found that it took at least 24 hours for something to dry 100%. It all kind of depends on the weather too and how humid it is in your house. So just kind of generally shape your feather. And then allow it to dry. Now I haven't had too many problems with this sticking down so firmly to the styrofoam that I couldn't get it back up again. But if you are concerned about that, you might want to move this onto saran wrap or something else that will not stick. You will need to flip it over at some point after a few hours to make sure that it's drying evenly on both sides. So I'm going to let this sit and dry for several hours, and then I will come back and I will shape it again. And so I will see you when this has dried. All right, here is our dried feather, and the only thing that is left to do now is to trim it to the final shape. And this can be whatever shape you want, so now is a great time to trim the tip, and once it's dry you get a nice sharp edge. So you can just continue to shape your feather however you would like it to look, and it's much easier once it's fully dried. I should have mentioned that the instructions do say that you can use a hair dryer to dry the fabric stiffener. I've not tried that, and I thought that it might make it hard to keep the shape that I wanted, so that's one of the reasons why I didn't try that. But if you want to experiment with using a hair dryer, the instructions say that that is a possibility as well. So I hope you enjoy making feathers to use as an embellishment for your project. I think it has really nice results, and we will see you in another video.